Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. This morning, we saw the Minnesota Vikings agree to a contract extension with Justin Jefferson that makes him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. So, want to dive into now some of the details surrounding that. It is a 4-year contract worth $140 million with $110 million guaranteed. It is going to approximately be $35 million per season in terms of annual value. I'm sure we will get some additional details in terms of the actual breakdown of those numbers as well in the coming hours, but like I mentioned, becomes the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, and I do think that it is absolutely justified. I understand that we are sort of still, maybe you could argue, a little bit new into this very heavily paid wide receiver era where we've seen a number of free agent wide receivers get paid this offseason, and not just free agents, but a lot of contract extensions as well. A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Nico Collins, Michael Pittman Jr., all of these names in the past month or so that have showed that there is definitely a shifting, especially when you look at the running back market in comparison, where the longevity and the guaranteed money on those deals in comparison to these wide receiver deals. We already knew that this was something that's been happening, but again, the money, value of these contracts is really starting to back up how we sort of feel about the importance of these positions from a national standpoint, and definitely shows where the coaches' heads are at in terms of understanding the value of the position. And wide receiver, obviously, wasn't always that way. That you have the great quarterback, and everybody wants to have the great quarterback, but it's just such a harder fix there that the easiest way to sort of find out whether or not the quarterback is a viable option is to make sure that he has viable options around him in those prove-it years. And that's exactly what the Vikings decided to do in this offseason, making sure that they secured their franchise wide receiver to see whether or not JJ McCarthy, who they moved up to take with the 10th overall pick, is going to be worth that investment long term. Because ideally for them, they would be paying JJ McCarthy this big contract too if he pans out throughout his rookie contract. But again, we've seen it, I think that there has never been, especially in today's age, a specific position in any sport that needs to be, I wouldn't say catered necessarily, but the development process is just so much more crucial for quarterback, it feels like, because of the mental capacity that it takes, especially on the biggest league in America. You could say the NFL is. I don't think that's very debatable. NFL has been king, and it will be for, some time, but to the difficulty of position, added with the fact that there is so much scrutiny that comes with it, it's just so important for these franchises to make sure they set up their quarterbacks in the best possible position. We saw 5 quarterbacks selected in the first round of 2021. 4 of them are already on different teams. And, some were more of a case of lack of talent than others, but at the same time, you can point to a number of different things throughout this process in terms of where the franchises sort of did these quarterbacks wrong. And the Vikings now, like I mentioned, are getting off in the right direction of making sure they lock down Justin Jefferson. And again, JJ McCarthy, not somebody that I was fully sold on in terms of, his NFL. He's got the NFL potential. I just think that his floor is also a lot lower as well. So I'm excited to see it and how it plays out. Definitely in the comment section, let us know how you feel about JJ McCarthy as a prospect. But he's going to have some weapons around him early on in his career with him and Jordan Addison, who they took the wide receiver in the first round last season as well. So there are going to be some options. TJ Hawkinson, of course, who I believe he was dealing with an injury down the stretch of last season. Also, fact check me on that if I'm off base there. But again, 3 really nice pass catching options for JJ McCarthy moving forward. But I want to talk a little bit about the bigger picture wide receiver market because, like I mentioned, we have seen all of these different star wide receivers get paid this offseason. And as much as, like I talked about, this is an example of the league is shifting to this pass-heavy offense. And as we acknowledge that, obviously the quarterback is important, but you can also still make do, especially with a good scheme. And I'm not going to dive fully into some of the quarterbacks that I have full doubts about right now. But when you look at the likes of and this is maybe unfair, I'm just saying, Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, these quarterbacks that maybe some people have questions with. I feel better about Purdy than I do with Tua, but they have been able to showcase some of their upside because of the fact that their teams have surrounded them with weapons on offense. And that's definitely the right way to go about it, which does mean that wide receivers are only going to continue to get paid more and more. That's why the Vikings making sure they got out ahead of this Justin Jefferson situation sooner rather than later is crucial, because there are some other really big name wide receivers on the market. And, Justin Jefferson, I do believe, should be the highest paid receiver in the NFL. He's already made all-pro teams in 3 of his first 4 seasons. He was the Offensive Player of the Year in 2022. He is a tremendous, tremendous talent that the Vikings can look to build around for years to come. And that being said, just because I think that he should be the highest paid doesn't mean the CeeDee Lambs and Jamar Chases of the world shouldn't also get theirs. And I believe I saw a report that Jamar Chase was actually waiting out the Justin Jefferson situation a little bit to see how much he could make. Now, the Bengals are definitely, we've talked a ton about the Bengals this offseason just with the T. Higgins contract holdout. And Trey Hendrickson requesting a trade as well. So there's a lot of people that the Bengals have to pay. Jamar Chase is now going to be looking at that number, $35 million per year, and he's going to think that he deserves to be in that same threshold. Now, give or take $1 million, $2 million in that full $140 million deal, but he's going to be trying to get his, just like Jefferson is now getting. That obviously makes things a lot more difficult for T. Higgins. And I've said before, I think that this is going to be a situation where Higgins doesn't necessarily have all too much leverage over the Bengals right now in terms of him holding out for the upcoming season. I think he's going to play out this last year on the franchise tag with the Bengals. They're going to try and compete for a Super Bowl, and then he's going to walk in free agency next year, maybe do some type of a sign and trade situation, but ultimately that's how I think it's going to play out there. The Cowboys are also an extremely difficult situation because it's only one wide receiver looking for money, but it's one wide receiver, one quarterback, and one cornerstone defensive end / linebacker in Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons as well. So I think that they're going to have a lot on their hands. And CeeDee Lamb is excellent. I do think Justin Jefferson is a notch above him. CeeDee Lamb is going to get paid that type of money, but if I'm the Cowboys, I probably would have a little bit more reservations in terms of being willing to dish out all of that type of money. Now, maybe they do so in the offseason and then eventually trade him. I think that a trade is very much on the table. And listen, I'm not the number one Dak Prescott fan in the world, but I do think that he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. I'm going to leave it at that I think he's a top 10 quarterback. Off the top of my head, I don't want to necessarily rank him through with some of the others in the NFL, but he does also deserve to get paid. And I don't know if ultimately, I don't know if the Cowboys are necessarily in the level of contention right now that they should be dishing out all of this money to a Dak Prescott and a CeeDee Lamb. But ultimately, I think that Dak is probably good enough that he can make do without CeeDee Lamb. What does CeeDee Lamb really do for your franchise if you're the Cowboys specifically, when the backup quarterback is Trey Lance, who, I mean, I would love to see him have a redemption, but the Cowboys just have no backup option at quarterback. This is a thought that I've put out there multiple times, and I don't think the Cowboys are an easy fit by any means, but I think that, or an easy fix is what I should say. I don't know, whatever. But ultimately, I don't know. I don't think that I can justify paying CeeDee Lamb that type of money, especially with all of the people that they just left walk in this past offseason. They were trying to save a little bit of money. Now, maybe that was money that they were hoping to, reallocate into CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott, but I don't think they're going to be able to keep every one of them. But again, Cowboys, it's a weird situation there. They're good, not great. How do you sort of get out of that little bit of stagnancy of being a 10-plus win team every season and trying to elevate yourself while also sort of navigating through all of these financial situations that surround the team? So again, give us your thoughts in the comments section, but there's going to be a lot to unpack with the Cowboys for sure, the Bengals as well, but again, ultimately, at the end of the day, have to feel really good for Justin Jefferson and this Minnesota franchise, where you lose out on Kirk Cousins during the offseason, and I can't guarantee that JJ McCarthy is going to be a hit for them, but they are doing a very solid job, I think, of putting the talent around him. They're going to find out, and they are definitively going to find out in terms of, if the offensive line needs a little bit of work. I don't love the running back room, but if JJ McCarthy can play in the NFL, the Vikings are going to find out by the end of his rookie season, and that, I think, is the big thing for the team. Again, whether it'll be good or not, we will have to see, but I do believe they're going to have some definitive answers. But that is all we have time for on this subject. We are going to be taking our next break here, and when we come back on the other end, it was a little bit of a wild weekend in the WNBA. All kinds of controversy surrounding Caitlin Clark versus the rest of the league, which has become a pretty common theme so far in her WNBA career. So we're going to be diving into all of the drama and give some thoughts on all of that. So stick with us, and we will be right back.